Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something quite chilling in aviation. It's about what happens when an accident investigation seems to go, well, fundamentally off course. We're focusing on the Air India Flight 171 crash that was back on June 12th, 2025. And our mission, really, in this deep dive is to unpack what should have been a pretty standard, by the book investigation, following all the international rules. But instead, what we're seeing as well, it's a baffling mess. Conflicting reports, questions that just won't go away, and this feeling that something is deeply wrong. It's raising concerns way beyond this one crash, affecting trust in global aviation. Just for context, again, it was an Air India Boeing 7878 registration VTB, crashed June 12th this year. So we're going to look at everything: the black box recovery, the site cleanup, the whole search for answers that seems to be hitting some serious turbulence.
Yeah, and this is absolutely critical because look, swift, transparent investigations, they're the bedrock, the foundation of keeping air travel safe globally. Every single step matters for reliability, and, well, that's exactly what seems to be under scrutiny here, isn't it?
Okay, so let's start with something that jumped out immediately as, well, incredibly unusual: the cleanup. The speed of the cleanup at the crash site, it actually started on June 12th, the very day of the crash. Think about that. This was before they even found the black boxes, and certainly before any international teams like the US NTSB or the UK's AIB could even get there. And the scale, according to India's own AIB report, was just massive. 159 vehicles, things like 15 earth movers, 5 excavators, 25 trucks, even a roller. Huge operation.
What's fascinating here is, it's not just slightly bending the rules. This goes against the core principles. It directly contravenes ICO Annex 13 guidelines. Those are the international standards, right? The playbook for how you investigate these things.
Exactly, the playbook.
And those guidelines are all about preserving evidence, being thorough. Yet we see the site clearing was done before June 24th. That's before they even read out the black boxes. It makes getting a true picture of what happened incredibly difficult. It almost suggests, well, maybe an intent to control the story rather than find the truth.
That kind of speed, yeah, it just wipes away potential clues, doesn't it? Even if you assume good intentions, the evidence is gone. And speaking of evidence, that brings us straight to the black boxes. They've become this central mystery in the whole thing. So the timeline: primary recorder found June 13th, about 28 hours after the crash, okay? Then the backup, June 16th. Now, both are usually in the tail, right? The primary a bit more forward, the backup further back, deeper in. So here's the big question, the one nobody seems to have a good answer for. Where were these boxes between June 16th and June 24th? Officially, police guard in Ahmedabad, CCTV watching them constantly. That's the story. But, it just doesn't explain why they were held for 8 whole days. Why not fly them straight to New Delhi for analysis?
And, well, if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, there's a reliable source, someone we trust, telling us that unofficially, things went differently. Unofficially, the primary black box was actually flown to Washington, D.C., to the NTSB facility there, just for a short time, then back to India.
Wow, PC.
Yeah, and this kind of matches up with some media buzz, social media stuff around June 19th, suggesting they would be sent to the U.S. The reason given then was potential fire damage.
Okay, but wait, if one went to D.C., what about the other?
Well, that's part of the puzzle. See, this specific Boeing 7878, it has 2 units. And crucially, they both record everything: flight data, cockpit voice, comms logs, the full data set.
Ah, so redundancy.
More than redundancy, it's about verification, dual source verification. Some regulators, insurers, even courts, they require that.
Yeah.
Because if you only have one source.
Right, it's open to legal challenge, isn't it?
Precisely. So the idea that one might have gone on this detour, even briefly, casts a huge shadow over the whole investigation's integrity. Are they trying to sidestep that dual verification?
Yet the official line from June 24th, pushed by India's civil aviation minister, was completely different. They emphasized India's own state-of-the-art decoding lab in New Delhi, said it was finished back in April, fully capable, and the NTSB would just help out on Indian soil. So if they had this amazing facility ready to go, why the 8-day wait? And why the unofficial U.S. trip story? It doesn't add up.
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And then there's how they finally got to New Delhi. Both recorders flown by the Indian Air Force on June 24th. Okay, but get this. They arrived 3 hours and 15 minutes apart. One landed at 2 p.m., the other at 5:15 p.m.
3 hours apart. Why?
The official reason was safety. Deliberate. 2 separate teams, 2 separate flights, just to be safe. Which, okay, plausible. But it could also suggest they traveled from different places, couldn't it? Which, again, feeds that unofficial narrative about one being elsewhere. Anyway, data extraction supposedly started that evening, June 24th. And they had the front box memory downloaded by the 25th.
Okay, so the cleanup was weird. The black box handling is confusing. And then there's the international help aspect, another big red flag. Reuters reported June 25th. India said no thanks to a UN investigator joining the probe.
And this is, well, it's highly unusual. The UN's aviation agency, ICAO, they actually offered help on their own initiative. According to ICAO's own rules, Annex 13, that's pretty much unprecedented. Yeah. Normally, they only step in if the investigating country asks them to.
So ICAO breaks its own norms to offer help.
And India refuses.
Yeah.
It can definitely be seen as, an assertion of investigative sovereignty, keeping tight control. But it certainly makes you ask the question, what exactly are they trying to control so tightly? Why refuse help offered in such an unusual way?
Given all these irregularities, let's call them, it's no surprise that big names in air safety started noticing, like Greg Faith, famous former NTSB investigator, led their GO team. He voiced his concern pretty directly. He said a concern right now that the investigative process is not moving forward at the pace it should be.
Yeah, and Faith's point was, look, with that amount of subject matter expertise on site, you'd expect things to move quickly. You'd expect information. He said somebody should be releasing some factual information about what's going on, and he pointed out the complete lack of official communication. Just silence.
Total silence.
In my experience, that kind of silence from an official investigation, it speaks volumes. It actually reminds me a bit of the Silk air crash back in '97. Faith wrote a massive, 48-page rebuttal to the official report then, highlighting similar issues, reporting problems, lack of transparency. So there's history here, unfortunately.
Okay, now let's get to something really intriguing, something that might actually hint at a cause, adding another layer here. On June 13th, just one day after the crash, Indian authorities ordered an inspection of Air India's entire 787 fleet. That's fast, really fast.
It is fast and significant.
Yeah.
Because just a few days after the crash, on June 18th, the FAA over in the U.S. published an airworthiness directive, an AD, for the Boeing 787.
An AD, so a safety mandate?
Exactly, a mandatory action. And this one was specifically about preventing wastewater leakage.
Wastewater. From the toilets.
Yes, from the washrooms.
Yeah.
Leakage that could lead to electrical shorts and system failures. But here's the crucial part. That FAA directive, it actually came after a Boeing directive about the very same issue. Boeing put theirs out weeks before the crash, back on March 6, 2024.
So Boeing knew, issued a warning, then the crash happens, then India orders inspections immediately, and then the FAA makes it mandatory.
Precisely. The sequence, especially that immediate fleet inspection order, it strongly suggests the Indian authorities might have already had a very good idea, maybe even knew what caused this terrible tragedy. It points towards a known issue, something that maybe Air India hadn't fully addressed despite the earlier Boeing warning.
And there's visual evidence out there too, right?
A video. Yeah, there's video of the accident.
Yeah.
And it clearly shows the plane lost thrust, couldn't hold altitude.
Yeah.
You can also see the RAT, the ram air turbine, that little emergency power generator it was deployed. And the landing gear wasn't retracted. And connecting that back, the washroom, the potential source of that leak, it's located right behind the cockpit. And it's right next to the access panel for the main equipment bay under the floor, where all the critical electrical stuff is housed. You can see how a leak there could be catastrophic.
Wow. Okay. So, the weird cleanup, the black box mystery, refusing help, the silence, and now this potential link to a known defect. It's a lot.
And there's one more piece, potentially. A sort of silent witness that could, in theory, cut through all this confusion. The Emergency Locator Transmitter Distress Tracking Unit, the ELTDT, pictures show it looked relatively undamaged after the crash.
What could that tell us?
Well, if it managed to transmit any data via satellite, even just one attempted ping, it would give us an exact time and location when a distress situation was detected. And importantly, that data comes from a system totally independent of the black boxes. It could be critical for verification.
But have we heard anything about that?
Not a word. There's been absolutely no announcement about any satellite data coming through from that unit, which, given everything else, feels like another curious silence, doesn't it?
It really does. So let's try and pull this together. Our deep dive shows, several really alarming things that just don't fit the picture of a normal investigation. You've got the crash site cleared way too early. That's a direct breach of ICO guidelines, basically tampering with evidence. Then the whole black box saga, the 8-day delay, the conflicting stories, that rumor about one going to DC, which, if true, undermines the whole idea of checking one box against the other. Add to that India refusing help from ICO, even when ICO made that unprecedented offer, plus the worrying lack of transparency, the silence that Greg Faith pointed out, and finally, the strong suggestion of a link to a known problem with the 787, the wastewater leak, backed up by Boeing's earlier warning and the visual evidence from the crash itself. And when you think about the bigger picture here, the Boeing 787, it's everywhere, over 1,100 of them flying every day, carrying hundreds of people each time. For the safety of everyone flying, for your safety when you travel, there just has to be transparency, real, unimpeachable transparency in an investigation like this.
Absolutely. Right now, this Indian-led investigation, it really seems hampered by politics, maybe national interest, commercial concerns, who knows. But what's clear is a lack of transparency and, frankly, a lack of urgency. It just breaks every rule in the book for how these things are supposed to be handled internationally. The public deserves answers. And more than anyone, the families of those who are lost deserve the absolute unvarnished truth.
So it leaves us with this thought. When an aviation investigation seems to go so far off the rails, so far from international norms, when the handling of crucial evidence is shrouded in secrecy and contradiction, and when there are these hints of a known danger perhaps not being addressed, what does that really mean for our trust in air travel? And what other questions should it make you ask about how safety is truly being prioritized?